They were shivering, stained with blood, and curled up in the snow. When my 6-year-old son, Leo, begged me to open the door, I thought I was saving 2 stray puppies from a blizzard. I was wrong. Dead wrong. I didn't just let in wolves. I let in the lost heirs of the Blackwood pack, and I didn't realize my mistake until the sun rose and the ground began to shake. I looked out the window to see not 1, but 50 timber wolves circling my cabin, and standing at the front, with eyes like molten gold and an aura of pure death, was him, Kalen Blackwood, the Alpha King. And he didn't come to say, "Thank you." The winter in Silver Creek, Wyoming, didn't just bite, it chewed you up and spit you out. Tessa's heart shivered, pulling her threadbare cardigan tighter around her chest. The heating unit in the small, rented cabin had died 3 hours ago, and the temperature inside was dropping fast. Outside, the wind howled like a banshee, rattling the frosted window panes. "Mama?" Tessa turned from the window. Her 6-year-old son Leo was standing by the back door. He was small for his age, with messy brown hair and eyes that were too big and too kind for a world that treated Omegas like dirt. He was wearing his dinosaur pajamas and pointing a shaking finger at the bottom of the door. "Leo, get away from the draft, baby. Come get under the blankets," Tessa said, her voice tired. She had just finished a double shift at the Rusty Spoon diner, and her feet throbbed. "But Mama, they're crying," Leo whispered, pressing his ear against the wood. "Can't you hear them?" Tessa paused. She strained her ears, listening past the wind. Whine, scrape, whine. It wasn't the wind. It was the distinct, high-pitched distress call of a canine. Tessa's heart skipped a beat. She was an Omega, the lowest rank in werewolf hierarchy, but her instincts were still sharp. "It's probably just a raccoon, Leo," she lied, though the scent drifting through the cracks told a different story. It smelled like pine, ozone, and blood. "No," Leo insisted, his hand gripping the doorknob. "It's Pups. They're hurting." Before Tessa could stop him, Leo twisted the lock and shoved the door open. The blizzard roared into the kitchen, bringing a swirl of snow and ice. "Leo, no!" Tessa lunged forward, grabbing the back of his shirt to yank him back. But Leo had already dropped to his knees in the snow that had piled up on the welcome mat. "Look, Mama! Look!" Tessa looked down, and her breath hitched in her throat. Huddled against the doorframe, half buried in a drift, were 2 balls of fur. They were tiny, no more than a few months old. One was a stark, snowy white. The other was a deep, charcoal grey. They were shivering so violently their teeth chattered, and the white one had a jagged gash running down its flank, matting its pristine fur with dark crimson. They weren't just wolves. As an Omega, Tessa could feel the hum of their energy. These were shifters, wolf children, stuck in their shifted form, likely due to trauma or the extreme cold forcing their bodies into survival mode. "We have to help them," Leo cried, tears freezing on his cheeks. He reached out to touch the grey one. "Don't touch them," Tessa snapped, panic flaring. In the wolf world, touching another pack's pups was a death sentence. If these pups belonged to the local pack, the Silver Creek Guardians, and Tessa was found with them, she could be accused of kidnapping, or worse. But the white pup lifted its head. Its eyes were a piercing, unnatural violet. It whined, a sound so broken and filled with pain that it shattered Tessa's resolve. She looked out into the darkness. No parents, no tracks, thanks to the heavy snowfall. If she left them here, they would be frozen statues by morning. "Okay," Tessa whispered, feeling a sense of doom settle in her gut. "Okay, Leo, grab the towels." She scooped the freezing creatures up. They were heavier than they looked, dense with muscle and magic. She kicked the door shut, locking the storm out, and carried the bundles of fur to the fireplace. She didn't know it yet, but as she laid them down on the rug, she had just invited the most dangerous kind of trouble into her home. She had just touched the bloodline of the Alpha King. The night was a blur of warm water, antiseptic, and bandages. Tessa worked with the efficiency of a nurse, though she had no formal training. Omegas were raised to be caretakers, and her hands moved on their own. She cleaned the gash on the white pup's flank. It was a claw mark, deep and nasty. This wasn't an accident. These children had been attacked. Leo sat cross-legged on the floor, watching with wide, awestruck eyes. "Are they going to be okay, Mama?" "I think so, baby," Tessa murmured, wrapping the charcoal pup in a thick wool blanket. They just need warmth. As the warmth of the fire began to penetrate their bones, the pups stopped shivering. Their breathing evened out. The charcoal one, a male, shifted in his sleep, his paw twitching. That was when Tessa saw it. She was brushing the matted fur around the male pup's neck when her fingers grazed metal. A collar. It was woven from leather and silver, real silver, which was rare because it irritated wolf skin unless treated with ancient magic. Hanging from the collar was a small, heavy pendant. Tessa held it up to the firelight, and her blood ran cold. It was a shield embossed with a roaring bear and a wolf intertwined, crowned by black thorns. The room seemed to spin. Tessa dropped the tag as if it were burning coal. "Mama?" Leo asked, sensing her fear. "What's wrong?" "Leo," Tessa's voice trembled. "Go pack your backpack. Now." "Why?" "It's sleeping time. Do as I say," she snapped, louder than she intended. Leo flinched, and Tessa immediately softened, grabbing his shoulders. "Baby, listen to me. This symbol, it belongs to the Blackwood Pack." The Blackwood Pack wasn't just a pack, they were the ruling class. They controlled the entire Northern Territory. Their alpha, Kalen Blackwood, was known as the King of the North. Rumors about him were terrifying. They said he ripped the throat out of his own uncle for treason. They said he had no mate because his wolf was too feral to love. And these pups? These high-born, silver-collared pups were likely his kin. "Why are they here, Mama?" "I don't know," Tessa whispered, glancing at the window. The snow was stopping. The silence outside was heavier than the wind had been. "But if the king thinks we took them, if he thinks we hurt them," she didn't finish the sentence. The white pup whimpered and opened its violet eyes. It looked at Tessa, not with aggression, but with recognition. It nudged her hand with a wet nose. Tessa's heart broke. She couldn't throw them out, but she couldn't stay here. "We leave at first light," she decided. "We'll take them to the ranger station at the edge of the territory. We'll leave them there anonymously. We can't be found with them." She pulled Leo into her lap on the sofa, keeping a vigil over the sleeping wolves. She didn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like a monster. She prayed for the sun to rise quickly. She prayed they could slip away. But fate, cruel and twisted, had other plans. At 5 a.m., the temperature plummeted. At 5:30 a.m., the birds stopped singing. At 6 a.m., the coffee in Tessa's mug rippled, just like water in a movie when a T-Rex approaches. Thump, thump, thump. The ground was vibrating. Tessa stood up slowly, walking to the window. She pulled back the curtain an inch. Her breath fogged the glass, but she could see clearly enough. The white snow was stained with black shapes. Wolves, dozens of them. Massive, armored, disciplined wolves, standing shoulder to shoulder, forming a perfect, impenetrable ring around her tiny cabin. And in the center of the yard, standing in human form, was a man. He was tall, easily 6'5", wearing a long black tactical coat that whipped around his legs. His hair was dark as a raven's wing, wet with melted snow. Even from this distance, Tessa could feel the power radiating off him. It tasted like ozone and crushed iron. He didn't yell. He didn't knock. He simply raised one hand, and the 50 wolves growled in unison, a sound that shook the cabin's foundation. It was Kalen Blackwood, and he had found them. "Mama, the puppies are waking up," Leo yawned, rubbing his eyes, completely oblivious to the army outside. Tessa spun around, her face pale. "Leo, listen to me very carefully. Take the puppies and go into the pantry. Close the door. Do not come out. No matter what you hear, do not make a sound." "But, go," Tessa hissed. Leo, sensing the genuine terror in his mother's voice, scrambled to obey. He nudged the 2 wolf pups, who were groggy but mobile now. They trotted after him, their claws clicking on the linoleum. The pantry door clicked shut. Tessa took a deep breath. She smoothed her hair, grabbed a kitchen knife, a useless gesture against an alpha, but it made her feel slightly less naked, and walked to the front door. She couldn't let them breach the house. If they stormed in, they might hurt Leo in the crossfire. She had to go out. She unlocked the deadbolt. The click echoed like a gunshot. She opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. The cold hit her instantly, but it was nothing compared to the heat of the gaze fixed upon her. 50 pairs of wolf eyes snapped to her, but only one pair mattered. Kalen Blackwood took a step forward, Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, in a brutal, carved-from-granite way. His jaw was sharp, covered in a shadow of stubble, but his eyes, they were gold, glowing with the inner light of his wolf, and they were filled with a rage so profound it made Tessa's knees buckle. "Where are they?" His voice was a low rumble, deep enough to vibrate in Tessa's chest. Tessa griped the doorframe. I don't know who you mean," Kalen snarled, flashing elongated canines. "Do not lie to me, Omega. I can smell them on you. I can smell the blood of my kin on your hands." He pointed a gloved finger at her. "You have 10 seconds to return my nephew and niece, or I will burn this cabin to the ground with you inside." "I didn't take them," Tessa cried out, finding her voice. "I found them. They were freezing to death on my doorstep last night." "Lies," a voice shouted from behind Kalen. A second man stepped forward. He was leaner, with slicked-back blonde hair and a sneer that twisted his face. This was Silas, Kalen's beta and younger brother. He looked at Tessa with pure disgust. "We have witnesses, Kalen," Silas said, his voice smooth and serpentine. The tracker showed the pups were taken by an Omega, matching her description near the border. "She's holding them for ransom. Or worse, she's working for the Southern Rogues." "No," Tessa screamed. "That's not true. Check the snow. There are no tracks leading away from here." Kalen's eyes narrowed. He looked at the pristine snow around the cabin. It was true. The blizzard had covered everything, but there were no tracks leaving the house. "Bring them out," Kalen commanded, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Now." Tessa knew she had no choice. She turned back to the house. "Leo," she called out, her voice breaking. "It's okay. Come out." The silence stretched for a painfully long 10 seconds. Then, the pantry door creaked. Leo stepped into the kitchen, holding the hands of 2 human children. Tessa gasped. The pups had shifted back. The boy, about 7, had messy black hair and grey eyes. The girl, maybe 5, had platinum blonde hair and those striking violet eyes. They were naked, wrapped only in the towels Tessa had provided. Leo walked them to the front door, holding their hands tightly. He looked at the army of wolves, then at the terrified giant of a man in the front. Leo didn't cower. He stepped in front of the 2 royal children, puffing out his small chest. "Don't you hurt them," Leo shouted at the Alpha King. "My mama fixed them. The bad man hurt them, but my mama fixed them." The silence that followed was absolute. Kalen froze. He looked at the small, courageous boy standing up to an entire pack. Then his eyes shifted to the girl, his niece, Mira. "Mira?" Kalen whispered, the rage draining from his face, replaced by shock. The little girl let go of Leo's hand. She ran across the porch, down the stairs, and slammed into Kalen's legs, burying her face in his coat. "Uncle Kay," she sobbed. "The bad men. They tried to put us in the river." Kalen scooped her up, wrapping his massive arms around her. He looked at the boy, Jace, who was still standing next to Leo. "Jace, report," Kalen said, his voice thick with emotion. The boy, Jace, pointed a trembling finger. "Not at Tessa." He pointed at Silas. "He did it," Jace whispered, his voice carrying in the crisp morning air. "Uncle Silas told the rogue wolves to take us." Every head in the pack turned toward Silas. The beater's face went white. "The boy is delirious. The cold has scrambled his mind. Kalen, you can't believe this. This Omega trash and her bastard son." Kalen slowly set Mira down. He straightened up, and the air around him began to crackle with electricity. The golden light in his eyes turned to a burning crimson. He looked at Tessa, who was clutching Leo, shivering in the cold. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also the fierce defiance. He saw how she had bandaged Jace's leg. Then he looked at his brother. "Seize him," Kalen commanded. As the pack descended on the traitorous beta, Kalen walked up the stairs. Tessa flinched, backing away. But Kalen didn't attack. He stopped 2 feet in front of her. He towered over her, blocking out the sun. He took off his heavy tactical coat and, with a gentleness that contradicted his violence moments ago, draped it over Tessa's shoulders. It smelled like cedar, rain, and raw power. "You saved my blood," Kalen said, his voice low and intimate. "And for that, I owe you a debt." He looked down at Leo. "And you, little warrior, you protected my pack." Leo blinked. "Does that mean you aren't going to eat us?" A rare, small smile tugged at the corner of Kalen's mouth. "No," I'm not going to eat you. He looked back at Tessa, and for a second, their eyes locked. Tessa felt a jolt of electricity zip down her spine, a connection so strong it made her dizzy. Mate, her wolf whispered. Kaelin's eyes widened slightly. He felt it too. Pack your things, Kaelin ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. What? Why? Tessa stammered. Because my brother has allies. You are a target now. You and your son are coming to the stronghold. I can't, Tessa protested. I have a job. I have rent. Kaelin leaned in, his face inches from hers. Tessa Hart, you just exposed a coup in the royal family. Your life as a waitress is over. You are under my protection now. He paused, his gaze dropping to her lips, then back to her eyes. And besides, he added, his voice dropping to a growl that made her toes curl, I don't leave what's mine behind. The journey to the Blackwood stronghold was suffocatingly silent. Tessa sat in the back of a sleek, armored SUV, the leather seats worth more than her entire life's earnings. Leo had fallen asleep instantly, his head resting heavily in her lap, exhausted by the adrenaline of the morning. Beside them sat Jace and Mira, the royal pups, who were watching Tessa with wide, curious eyes. In the front passenger seat sat Kaelin. He hadn't spoken a word since they left the cabin. He was on his phone, barking low, clipped commands to his security team. Every now and then, his eyes would flick to the rearview mirror, locking onto Tessa's. The intensity of his golden gaze made her skin prickle, but he would look away just as quickly, his jaw tightening. Where are we going, really? Tessa gathered the courage to whisper, trying not to wake Leo. Kaelin didn't turn around. Home, the Blackwood estate. It's the safest place in the territory. Safe for you, maybe, Tessa muttered. I'm an Omega. Places like that, they don't welcome people like me. Kaelin turned then, shifting his massive frame to look at her over the seat. You are not a guest, Tessa. You are a witness under the king's protection. Anyone who looks at you the wrong way answers to me. It sounded like a promise, but to Tessa, it sounded like a target on her back. The SUV slowed as they approached a massive iron gate flanked by stone guard towers. The structure was less like a house and more like a fortress. The Blackwood estate was a sprawling architectural beast of grey stone and glass, nestled against the base of the mountains. It screamed power. It screamed predator. As the car stopped in the circular driveway, a phalanx of staff and guards was already waiting. Kaelin stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket. He opened the back door for Tessa. Leave your bag. The staff will take it. Tessa climbed out, hoisting a sleeping Leo into her arms. The weight was comforting, grounding her. Uncle Kaelin, a woman's voice, sharp and polished like a diamond, cut through the cold air. Tessa froze. Walking down the stone steps was a woman who looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. She was tall, with cascading auburn hair and eyes the color of emeralds. She wore a white cashmere coat that probably cost as much as a car. She ignored Tessa completely and went straight to the royal pups, Jace and Mira, who had scrambled out of the car. Oh, thank the moon goddess, the woman cried, performing a perfect display of relief, though her eyes remained dry. She hugged the children briefly before straightening up and turning her gaze to Kaelin. We were sick with worry, Kaelin. When the tracker went dark, it's handled, Lydia, Kaelin said, his voice dropping a few degrees. Silas is in custody. Lydia, the name tasted bitter even in Tessa's mind, gasped. Silas? Your own brother? Surely there's a mistake. The only mistake was letting him live this long, Kaelin growled. He gestured toward Tessa. Lydia, this is Tessa Hart. She saved the children. Lydia finally looked at Tessa. Her eyes raked over Tessa's worn-out boots, her fraying jeans, and the sleeping child in her arms. The look wasn't hostile. It was worse. It was dismissive, as if Tessa were a piece of furniture that had been placed in the wrong room. How? Quaint, Lydia said, offering a tight smile. I'll have the housekeeper set up a bed in the servants' quarters for her. No, Kaelin said. The word cracked like a whip. Lydia blinked. Excuse me? She is not a servant. She stays in the East Wing, in the Blue Suite. A hush fell over the gathered staff. Even Tessa's eyes widened. The East Wing was the royal wing. The Blue Suite was reserved for visiting dignitaries or high-ranking family. Lydia's smile faltered, a vein twitching in her forehead. Kaelin, be reasonable. The East Wing is secure access only. You can't just put a stray Omega and her child next to your study. Kaelin stepped into Lydia's personal space. He didn't look like a civilized man anymore. He looked like the wolf that had led the pack in the snow. This stray is the reason my niece and nephew aren't frozen corpses right now. She stays where I can see her. End of discussion. He turned to a stern-looking older woman in a grey uniform. Mrs. Gable, show Miss Hart to her room. Get them food. Anything they want. If she asks for the moon, you find a ladder. Kaelin cast one last, unreadable look at Tessa, then turned and marched toward the security center, his guards trailing him. Lydia remained on the steps. As Tessa walked past her, clutching Leo tight, Lydia leaned in. "Don't get comfortable, sweetheart," Lydia whispered, her voice smelling of expensive perfume and venom. "Kings might play with peasants, but they never keep them." Tessa didn't reply. She kept her head down and followed Mrs. Gable, but her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She had survived the blizzard. She had survived the wolves, but she wasn't sure she would survive the politics of the Blackwood pack. The blue suite was larger than Tessa's entire cabin. It had a four-poster bed the size of a boat, a fireplace that roared with warmth, and a bathroom with a tub deep enough to swim in. Mrs. Gable was efficient and cold, dropping off trays of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh fruit before leaving without a word. Leo woke up, ate like a starving animal, and then immediately started bouncing on the bed. "Mama, look at the TV. It's huge." Tessa forced a smile. "It's nice, baby. But remember the rules. We stay in the room." "Why?" "Because." Tessa struggled to explain class warfare to a 6-year-old. "Because big houses have big secrets. We have to be careful." Night fell. The castle grew quiet, but Tessa couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. Around midnight, a soft knock came at the door. Tessa grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from the mantelpiece. "Who is it?" "It's Kaelin." Tessa hesitated, then unlocked the door. Kaelin was standing in the hallway. He looked exhausted. He had shed his suit jacket and tie. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing the column of his throat and a hint of a tattoo on his collarbone. He held 2 glasses and a bottle of amber liquid. "I didn't think you'd be asleep," he said softly. "Hard to sleep when you're in a lion's den," Tessa replied, stepping back to let him in. He poured a drink and handed it to her. "Whiskey. Rare blend. Helps the nerves." Tessa took it. "Is Silas?" "He's in the containment cells beneath the foundation," Kaelin said, walking to the window where she had been standing. He confessed. He wanted the Alpha title. He thought if Jace and Mira were gone, and I had no heir, the pack would look to him. "He's a monster," Tessa shuddered. "He's a politician," Kaelin corrected grimly. He took a long sip. "Tessa, I came to apologize for Lydia. She is territorial." "She's your mate?" Tessa asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Her heart squeezed painfully at the thought. Kaelin laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "Lydia? No. She is the daughter of the Alpha of the Southern Sands. Our parents arranged a union years ago to merge the territories. I never agreed to it, but she has been living here for months, acting as the lady of the house, trying to force my hand." He turned to face her. The room was dim, lit only by the dying fire. The golden flecks in his eyes seemed to swirl. "My wolf doesn't want Lydia," Kaelin murmured, taking a step toward her. Tessa's breath hitched. "What does your wolf want?" Kaelin closed the distance. He reached out, his rough, warm hand cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed over her lower lip. The sparks that flew between them were undeniable, now a magnetic pull that made Tessa's knees weak. "You know what he wants," Kaelin whispered, his voice rough. "He wanted you the moment he saw you fighting for those pups in the snow." An Omega with the heart of a warrior, he leaned down. His lips were inches from hers. Tessa could smell the whiskey and the cedar on him. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted it more than she had ever wanted anything. But then he pulled back. He dropped his hand, his expression hardening into a mask of regret. "But I can't," he said, his voice strained. "If I claim you, if I mark you, you become a target for everyone who hates me. Silas has allies I haven't found yet. Lydia has the backing of the South. If they know you are my true mate, they will kill you to break me." Tessa felt cold, the loss of his touch physical. "So what are we then?" "You are my charge," Kaelin said, walking to the door. He didn't look back. "And I will keep you safe, even if I have to keep you at arm's length to do it." He left, the lock clicking shut behind him. Tessa stared at the closed door, the taste of whiskey on her tongue turning to ash. He was protecting her. She knew that. But as she curled up in the massive, empty bed, she realized that being safe and being alone felt terrifyingly similar. 2 days passed. The tension in the Blackwood estate was palpable. A rubber band stretched to its breaking point. Tessa tried to keep a low profile, but it was impossible. Leo had become fast friends with Jace and Mira. The three of them were inseparable, a chaotic whirlwind running through the grim hallways. To Tessa's surprise, Kaelin didn't stop it. In fact, he encouraged it. Jace needs to learn how to be a child, not just a king, Kaelin had told her over breakfast, watching Leo teach the future alpha how to play tag. But while Kaelin watched with a soft expression, others watched with narrowed eyes. Lydia was always there, hovering, watching. She had stopped making snide comments to Tessa. Instead, she had become terrifyingly polite. She would smile at Leo. She would compliment Tessa's hair. It was unnerving. The breaking point came on the third evening. It was the night of the Moon Gala. It was a mandatory event for the pack's high-ranking officials to celebrate the full moon. Kaelin had insisted Tessa attend. "I'm not leaving you in the room alone," he had said, not with Silas's spies potentially still in the staff. So, Tessa found herself wearing a silk gown that Mrs. Gable had grudgingly provided a deep midnight blue that hugged her curves. She felt beautiful, but also like an imposter. The ballroom was dazzling, chandeliers dripping with crystals, tables laden with gourmet food, and hundreds of wolves in human form, radiating power and wealth. Tessa stood in the corner, holding a glass of water, watching Leo play under a table with Jace. Enjoying the view? Tessa stiffened. Lydia slid up beside her. She was wearing red, looking like a blood splatter against the pale decor. "It's a lovely party," Tessa said neutrally. "It is," Lydia agreed. She signaled a waiter. "Champagne for the lady?" "Oh, no, wait. You're driving later, aren't you? Or fleeing? Whatever it is you Omegas do." She laughed lightly, then grabbed a platter of intricate pastries from a passing server. "Here, give these to the boy. He looks bored." She handed Tessa a plate of chocolate truffles dusted with gold. "Leo loves chocolate," Tessa said, hesitating. "But, oh, don't worry. It's carob, safe for wolves. My personal chef made them for Jace." Lydia smiled, a surprisingly genuine-looking expression. "Go on. A peace offering." "I know I was harsh when you arrived. I was stressed about the children." Tessa looked at the truffles. She looked at Lydia. It seemed like a genuine gesture, and she didn't want to cause a scene by refusing the future queen. "Thank you," Tessa said. She walked over to the table. "Leo, honey, look, a treat." Leo crawled out, his eyes lighting up. "Chocolate. It's special chocolate, just for us," Jace said, grabbing one. "Wait," Lydia's voice cut in. She was suddenly right there. "Oh, Jace, darling, not those. Those are hazelnut. You're allergic, remember?" She deftly plucked the truffle from the prince's hand. "These are just for Leo. He's the guest." Tessa felt a weird ping in her gut. Why would she know Jace's allergies but offer the plate to the group? But Leo had already popped a truffle into his mouth. Yum! Tessa watched him chew. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Leo smiled, then frowned. He rubbed his stomach. "Mama, my tummy feels hot." Tessa knelt down. "Did you eat too much dinner?" "No," Leo whimpered. He swayed. His skin, usually rosy, was turning a sickly shade of grey. Sweat beaded instantly on his forehead. "Mama, it burns." Suddenly, Leo doubled over, retching violently. "Leo!" Tessa screamed, grabbing him. The boy began to convulse. Foam, tinged with pink, bubbled at the corner of his lips. The music in the ballroom didn't stop immediately, but the commotion drew eyes. "Help! Someone help him!" Tessa shrieked, panic clawing at her throat. She could smell it now beneath the sweetness of the carob. A bitter, metallic scent. Wolfsbane. Concentrated. Lethal to adults, catastrophic to a child. The crowd parted as Kaelin sprinted across the floor. He didn't run like a man. He moved with the blur of a supernatural creature. He skidded to his knees beside Tessa. "What happened?" he roared, his voice shaking the chandeliers. "He ate. He ate the chocolate," Tessa sobbed, holding Leo's trashing body. Lydia gave it to him. Kaelin's head snapped up. He looked across the room. Lydia was standing near the exit, her face a mask of feigned horror, her hand over her mouth. But Kaelin didn't go for her. Not yet. He looked at Leo. The boy's breathing was shallow, his heartbeat fluttering like a dying bird. He's dying, Kaelin realized. The poison is already in his blood. Save him, Tessa begged, grabbing Kaelin's lapels. Please, Kaelin. You're the king. Do something. There was only one thing an alpha could do to save an unrelated wolf from wolfsbane. It was an ancient, forbidden act. A blood transfusion of alpha essence. It was incredibly draining for the alpha, and it created a permanent, unbreakable bond. It was usually reserved for a mate or a child of their own blood. Kaelin didn't hesitate. Not for a fraction of a second. He bit into his own wrist, tearing the vein open. Dark, powerful blood welled up. Hold his head, Kaelin commanded. Tessa gripped Leo's convulsing jaw. Kaelin pressed his bleeding wrist to Leo's mouth. Drink, Leo. Drink, Kaelin commanded, using his alpha voice. The power in his voice forced the semi-conscious boy to swallow. As the alpha blood entered Leo's system, the reaction was instantaneous. Leo's back arched. His eyes flew open, glowing a bright, blinding gold, the color of Kaelin's eyes. Steam rose from Leo's skin as the alpha blood hunted down the poison and burned it out. Leo let out a cry, half human, half wolf, and then went limp. Tessa checked his pulse. It was strong, steady. She collapsed over him, weeping. The ballroom was dead silent. Every single member of the pack had just watched their king give his blood, his life force, to the son of a nobody Omega. It was a declaration more powerful than any marriage vow. Kaelin slowly stood up. His wrist was already healing, but his face was a portrait of pure, unadulterated murder. The golden aura around him flared so hot that the nearest guests stumbled back. He turned slowly toward Lydia. Lydia was backing away, her heels clicking on the marble. Kaelin. I didn't. It must have been the chef. Silence, Kaelin whispered. But the whisper carried to every corner of the room. He walked toward her. You tried to kill a child in my hall. I was trying to help you, Lydia screamed, her composure cracking. She's a distraction, a weak Omega. She ruins everything. You need a queen, not a charity case. Kaelin stopped inches from her. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't need to. He released his full alpha dominance. Lydia crumbled. She fell to her knees, gasping for air, crushed by the sheer weight of his power. You are right, Kaelin said, his voice echoing like doom. I do need a queen. He turned back to Tessa, who was cradling Leo. He walked back to her, reached down, and pulled her to her feet, keeping one arm securely around Leo. And I have found her. Kaelin looked at his pack. His eyes dared anyone to challenge him. Tessa Hart is my mate. Leo is my son by blood bond. Anyone who moves against them moves against the crown. He looked down at Tessa, his eyes softening. I'm done hiding it. Let them come. Tessa looked at the man who had just saved her world. She saw the danger in his eyes, but also the devotion. Let them come, she whispered back. But as the guards dragged a screaming Lydia away, and the medics rushed to check on Leo, Tessa saw someone else in the crowd. A man in a hooded cloak, standing near the kitchen entrance. He wasn't looking at Kaelin. He was looking at Leo, and he was smiling. The poison wasn't just jealousy. It was a test. And Leo had just passed it with Kaelin's blood in his veins. The real war had just begun. The week following the Moon Gala was a blur of medical checks and whispering guards. Leo had recovered with frightening speed. Not only had the wolfsbane vanished from his system, but he had changed. He grew 2 inches in 7 days. His appetite was voracious, and sometimes, when he was angry or excited, his eyes didn't just flash gold, they glowed with a steady, burning luminescence that mimicked Kaelin's. Tessa watched him from the veranda, her coffee cup trembling in her hands. Leo was in the garden below, playing tug-of-war with a thick rope. On the other end of the rope was a fully grown gamma wolf in his shifted form. Leo, a 6-year-old boy, was winning. With a giggle, he yanked the rope, and the 200-pound wolf went skidding across the grass. He is strong. Kaelin's voice came from behind her. Tessa didn't jump. She had grown used to his silent approach, to the constant, comforting weight of his presence. He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. He's too strong, Kaelin, Tessa whispered. It's not natural. The other Omegas, they look at him like he's a monster. He is not a monster, Kaelin said fiercely against her ear. "He is a miracle, my blood mixed with his. He is the first of his kind, a wolf born of omega gentleness but fueled by alpha dominance. He will be a great warrior." "I don't want him to be a warrior." Tessa turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I want him to be a child. I want him to be safe." Kaelin sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The intimacy between them had deepened. He hadn't officially marked her yet. He wanted to wait until the threat of the rogues was neutralized, but in every other way, they were mates. He slept in her bed. He ate from her plate. He growled at anyone who stood too close to her. "I will keep him safe," Kaelin promised. "Our scouts have tracked the source of the poison. It wasn't just Lydia. She was a pawn." Tessa froze. "Who? Silas?" "No. Silas is still rotting in the dungeon. This is something older." Kaelin's expression darkened. "The man you saw at the party, the hooded figure. My scouts believe it is Merrick. He was a general in my father's army who was exiled for practicing dark blood magic. He believes that power should be stolen, not inherited. And he saw you give Leo your blood," Tessa realized, horror dawning on her. "Yes. To Merrick, Leo is no longer a boy. He is a vessel, a walking battery of alpha essence that Merrick thinks he can drain to make himself king." Suddenly, a siren wailed. It wasn't the fire alarm. It was a deep, guttural horn blast that resonated through the stone of the castle. The war horn. Kaelin stiffened, his entire body turning to steel against hers. "Get Leo. Get the twins. Go to the panic room in the library vault. Now." "Kaelin, what is it?" "We are under attack," Kaelin snarled, his eyes bleeding into full gold. He looked out the window. The forest edge, usually a serene line of pine trees, was moving. Hundreds of wolves were pouring out of the tree line, but they weren't normal wolves. Their fur was matted and patchy, their eyes glowed a sickly neon green, and foam dripped from their maws. Rogues, corrupted by dark magic. "Go," Kaelin roared, pushing her toward the door. "Do not open the vault for anyone but me." Tessa ran. She didn't look back. She sprinted down the hallway, her heart pounding in her throat. She burst into the garden. "Leo, Jace, Mira." The children looked up. The sky was darkening as storm clouds summoned by magic, Tessa realized, swirled above the estate. "Mama, the bad dogs are here," Leo said. He wasn't scared. He was vibrating. "Come with me." Tessa grabbed Leo's hand and scooped up little Mira. Jace ran beside them. They made it to the library just as the first glass window shattered downstairs. The sounds of snarling and tearing metal echoed through the ventilation shafts. Tessa shoved the heavy oak bookshelf aside, revealing the steel door of the vault. She ushered the children inside. "Mama, aren't you coming?" Leo asked, pulling on her hand. Tessa looked down at him. She looked at the monitor inside the vault. It showed the security feed. The front gate had fallen. A massive wolf, easily the size of a horse, with black fur and scars resembling runic symbols carved into its flesh, was tearing through Kaelin's guards. This was Merrick, and Kaelin was out there, alone, surrounded by 36 enhanced rogues. Tessa made a choice. It was the stupidest, bravest choice of her life. "Stay here, Leo. Watch Jason, Mira. You are the man of the house right now." "No!" Leo cried. "I have to help him," Tessa said, tears streaming down her face. "I can't let him fight alone." She slammed the vault door shut and spun the locking wheel. She could hear Leo screaming her name from the other side, but she forced herself to turn away. She grabbed a decorative silver sword from the wall display. It was heavy, dull, and probably useless, but she was an Omega mother protecting her pack, and that made her dangerous. She ran toward the sound of the killing, but the great hall was a slaughterhouse. Furniture was smashed to kindling, paintings were shredded. The air was thick with the copper tang of blood. Kaelin was fighting like a god of war. He was in his human form, fighting, shifting enemies, required dexterity, wielding a massive iron pike. Every swing shattered bone. He moved with a brutal grace, ducking under snapping jaws and impaling rogues midair. But there were too many of them. As Tessa reached the balcony overlooking the hall, she saw a rogue clamp its jaws onto Kaelin's calf. Kaelin roared, driving his pike into the wolf's skull. But the distraction cost him. 2 more wolves slammed into his back, driving him to the ground. "Kaelin!" Tessa screamed. The distraction worked, but not in the way she hoped. The massive black wolf, Merrick, looked up. He shifted. Merrick in human form was a nightmare. He was skeletal, his skin grey and stretched tight over his bones, his eyes burning with green madness. "Ah," Merrick wheezed, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "The little nursemaid." He gestured with a hand. Two rogues broke off from the pack and bounded up the stairs toward Tessa. Tessa swung the heavy silver sword. She got lucky. The blade connected with the first wolf's snout, the silver burning its skin. The wolf yelped and recoiled, but the second wolf lunged. It tackled her, pinning her to the floor. Its jaws snapped inches from her throat, drool dripping onto her face. Tessa struggled, but she was weak. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the tear. Boom! The wolf on top of her was blasted away, not by a physical blow, but by a wave of pure force. Tessa gasped, sitting up. Standing at the top of the stairs was Leo. He had broken out of the vault, and he wasn't alone. Jace and Mira stood behind him, holding hands. Leo's eyes were two suns. He was floating, literally hovering an inch off the ground. The alpha blood in his veins was reacting to the proximity of the dark magic, triggering a violent defense mechanism. "Leave. My mama. Alone." Leo's voice wasn't a child's scream. It was a command. It rippled through the room, a shockwave of dominance so potent that every window in the castle shattered instantly. The rogues froze. The magic binding them to Merrick faltered against the raw, pure power of the Alpha King's blood, amplified by a child's rage. Down in the hall, Kalen threw the wolves off him. He looked up at Leo, awe warring with terror on his face. Merrick, however, looked delighted. Yes, look at that power. It is wasted on a child." Merrick began to chant, raising his hands. Green tendrils of smoke shot toward Leo, intending to bind him. "No," Kalen roared. Kalen ignored his injuries. He ignored the rogues. He launched himself across the room, shifting mid-air into his massive midnight black wolf. He collided with Merrick before the spell could finish. The impact shook the foundation. Kalen and Merrick tore into each other. It was a clash of titans, the rightful king against the usurper. Claws met magic. Teeth met bone. Leo fell to his knees, the burst of energy draining him. Tessa scrambled to him, shielding his body with hers. "Don't look, baby," she whispered, burying his face in her chest. But the battle was already ending. Kalen, fueled by the threat to his mate and his cub, was unstoppable. He endured Merrick's magical burns, clamped his jaws around the sorcerer's throat, and twisted. There was a sickening crunch. Merrick went limp. The moment the sorcerer died, the green light faded from the eyes of the remaining rogue wolves. Confused and leaderless, they whimpered. Kalen shifted back to human form. He stood over the body of his enemy, chest heaving, blood pouring from a dozen wounds. He looked up at the balcony. He didn't check the perimeter. He didn't check his guards. He walked to the stairs. He climbed them one by one, leaving bloody footprints on the carpet. He reached the landing and collapsed to his knees in front of Tessa and Leo. "Did they hurt you?" he rasped, his hand reaching out to touch Tessa's face with trembling fingers. "No," Tessa sobbed, grabbing his hand and kissing the bloody knuckles. "We're okay. You saved us." "He saved us," Kalen corrected, looking at the unconscious Leo. "He commands the pack now." Kalen pulled Tessa and the sleeping boy into his chest. He buried his face in Tessa's neck, inhaling her scent, grounding himself. "It's over," he whispered. "No more hiding. No more threats. You are home." The snow was falling again in Silver Creek, but the cabin was long gone. At the Blackwood estate, the mood was festive. The great hall had been repaired, the scars of battle covered by tapestries and flowers. Tessa stood in front of the mirror in the master suite. She wore a dress of silver silk, embroidered with the Blackwood crest, the bear and the wolf. But there was a new addition to the crest, a small star representing the Omega who guided them home. "You look beautiful," Kalen said, walking in. He wore his formal alpha regalia, a crown of white gold resting on his dark hair. He came up behind her, his hands resting on her stomach, her slightly rounded stomach. "Are you ready, my queen?" he asked softly. "I'm nervous," Tessa admitted. "The coronation, the pack gathering. They still whisper that I was a waitress. Let them whisper." Kalen smiled, kissing the sensitive spot behind her ear. "They whisper that you are the mother of the dragon wolf. They whisper that you fought a general with a dull sword. They whisper that the Alpha King bows to no one, except you." He turned her around. "Let's go. Our pack is waiting." And Leo? Leo is currently teaching Jace how to sneak extra desserts from the kitchen. Kaelin laughed. I pity the chef. Tessa smiled. She took Kaelin's arm. They walked out of the room, down the grand staircase, and into the roar of 1,000 wolves cheering their names. Tessa Hart, the freezing waitress who opened her door to 2 stray pups, stepped into the light. She wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was the heart of the North. And the king was right where he belonged, by her side. And that is the story of how one act of kindness changed the fate of the entire wolf kingdom. Tessa thought she was saving puppies, but she ended up saving the king's soul. What did you think of Leo's power awakening? Do you think the alpha blood will make him too dangerous in the future, or will he be a just leader? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next dramatic werewolf saga. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hi, my name is Mountain Confessions, the owner and manager of Mountain Confessions. After watching the video, Omega's son brought 2 freezing pups inside. The next morning, Alpha King surrounded her house. I'd really like to know what you think. How did this story make you feel? What stood out to me most was the kindness at the center of the story. Even in difficult situations, small acts of compassion can completely change the direction of someone's life. The moment the pups were brought inside felt simple, but it carried so much warmth and quiet courage. Sometimes people act out of instinct to help, without realizing how important that choice might become later. Do you think the Alpha King came there out of gratitude, curiosity, or something deeper? And if you were in that situation, would you have opened your door to strangers without hesitation? I think this story is a good reminder that treating others with kindness, even when no one is watching, can create connections we never expected. If this story gave you something to think about, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional Alpha King stories like this one, feel free to like or subscribe if you'd like to see more from Mountain Confessions.